What is a hologram? I'm Owen Litz.
And I'm Richard Peng, and let's get into the science of holography and how to make one at home.
So what is a hologram? When you hear the word hologram, the first thing that comes to mind is probably one of those fancy 3D projections seen in video games and movies. These are real holograms, right? No. Well, kind of.
While they are considered holograms, they aren't the ones that we're talking about. We're talking about the type of holograms that are made from interference patterns of light as seen above. This is a transmission hologram that we recorded in lab. In the first video, you can see that as we block the nuts and bolts, we can still see them as if it were a 3D object. And it's the same case in the second video where we move around and can see different perspectives. So what are holograms? Holograms are used a lot in the anti-counterfeiting scene where they can be seen on dollar bills, credit cards, and IDs. At the U of A, there's also extensive holography research being conducted where holography is becoming the future of VR and AR technologies. And there's also been profilometry work done using holography to help determine the deformation and shapes of surfaces. Globally, we can see that there's research centering on medical imaging as a non-invasive way for doctors to see the inside of the human body. So how does holography work? It essentially boils down to the interference of light waves, where light can interfere with itself in an infinite number of waves. There can be constructive and destructive interference, where constructive interference is when two waves match up in their peaks and troughs, adding together to create a big wave, and destructive interference, where the peaks line up with the troughs, adding to zero. Interference causes light to become different brightnesses, and for holograms, that interference pattern of different brightnesses is recorded onto a special holographic film between a beam of light and a light beam reflected off an object. Not all light sources can interfere with itself, however, so we typically use a laser which can.
Therefore, a hologram is 3 dimensions of data, the 3D object, encoded onto a 2-dimensional plane, the film. The process of making a hologram can be accomplished in one of two ways, a transmission hologram or a reflection hologram. A transmission hologram requires two beams, one to reflect off the object and one to act as the reference beam. This is done by splitting a laser into two paths using a beam splitter. The reference beam goes directly to the film and the object beam is incident on the object, which then reflects onto the film. This interference pattern between the reference beam and reflected light is what creates the hologram. This kind of hologram can only be viewed from the same angle with the same laser, making it impractical for most recording uses. A reflection hologram is much easier and can be done at home with minimal equipment. The reflection hologram only utilizes one beam, which makes it a much easier system to build. The object is placed behind the film and the light reflects off the object, interfering with the reference beam passing through the film. This hologram can be viewed using a point source of light at any angle and position instead of a laser.
So how do you record a hologram? The object of your hologram also makes a difference in how the image turns out. An interesting object with a high reflection in the color of the laser that is used is important. This guarantees a bright image with the shortest exposure time. The exposure time also varies depending on how powerful the laser being used is. The good thing is that holographic film is usually very hard to overexpose. A longer exposure time does come with its risks though. A longer exposure time means a longer period of time in which vibrations can ruin your hologram. You must also be in a dark room with no vibrations to produce a hologram. So what can you make a hologram of? Anything! With practice and a few attempts, you can make a hologram of anything with a long enough exposure and a wide enough beam.
These are some examples of holograms you can make with a reflection hologram set up at home. Make sure the room is dark and free of vibrations and you're already on your way to making a great hologram. A special thanks to Dr. Hua for being our faculty champion and Greg Nero for providing guidance in holographic film. Thanks for watching and have a great time creating some cool holograms.